His family are on vacation this week, on a much deserved vacation. So if you think about them, pray for them that God just blesses their time off. But we're still going to have church. Amen. The title of my message this morning is called Crazy Faith. Crazy Faith. Because as Christians, we're supposed to have crazy faith, right? We're supposed to have this kind of faith that allows us to do things that are maybe more, right? What did Jesus say? He says, if you have but the faith of a mustard seed, you can say to that mountain, move, and it'll be moved. But how many times have you guys ever prayed for something that doesn't seem quite as big as moving a mountain, and nothing seems to happen, right? And we begin to get discouraged, and we begin to think, man, I don't know. As Shane talked about in the announcements, we're going to 2 services. And that's because we live in a community that is very large. But our church would represent a very, 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 very small part of that community. Part of the reason for 2 services is they say that once you hit about 70 to 80% capacity, people will stop coming because we're weird in the Pacific Northwest and we don't like to sit next to people. I don't know if it's because we don't think people have learned to shower, or, we don't like their choice of perfume, whatever it is, but we don't like to sit right on top of each other. So they say, once, you're about this full, people stop coming because it starts to get uncomfortable to sit right next to people. So in order to create more room, because this is the building that we have, this is the building that God has blessed us with, in order to create more size, we say, you know what, if we go to 2, and you guys pick and choose, and that'll leave more room for you to invite more people to come, right? And we're going to have faith that God will reach this community. I've done the numbers. There's like close to 60, 75,000 people that live in Lakewood. And like less than 15% attend church anywhere. So the harvest field is out there, right? To put a really cheesy Christian spin on that. It's out there, and we need to go reach them. But in order to do that, we have to begin to adopt this sense of this crazy faith. Right? This faith that's willing to say, you know what? I'm going to step out for my faith. I'm going to stand for what I believe. I'm going to ask God for big things. Because when we begin to ask God for big things and God begins to come through and we see these big things happen and we have this kind of crazy faith that gives us this incredible testimony. Right? I love the stories of people who said, I was diagnosed with cancer and God healed me and I went in and the doctor scanned me and said, we can't find any trace of cancer in your body anywhere. I love those stories because that's the perfect witnessing point. The doctor goes, I don't understand how this happens. And it's a perfect opportunity for you to go, let me tell you how this happens. Let me tell you about this guy named Jesus and what he can do. Because what medical science can't understand, my God is completely capable of doing. It's a little encouragement for any of you out there who may be sick and going through something too, that where medical science will tell you there's nothing we can do for you, God is more than capable of doing it for you. So this idea of crazy faith, right? This idea of how do we develop this kind of crazy faith? What do we need to do in our lives to get to this level of faith that will take us beyond just Christianity light, or this idea that, maybe not quite, where we're not quite ready to take that step. And so we're going to look at a few different stories in the Bible. The first thing we need to do to develop this crazy faith is we need to get to Jesus. We just need to simply get to Jesus. In Mark chapter 5, verses 24 through 34, we see this story. And to set the story up, how this begins is Jesus is out teaching, and a man named Jairus comes to Jesus. He says, listen, teacher, my daughter is sick. She's dying. I need you to come to my house and pray for her and heal her, because the story of Jesus had already spread of this guy who was laying his hands on the sick, and they were being healed. He was opening deaf ears. He was opening blind eyes. People were being able to hear. They were being able to see. Lame people were being able to walk, right? And it's this incredible thing. It's this guy's like, my daughter is sick, and I need to get her. I need to get Jesus to come see her. So it says Jesus went with him, and all the people of the crowd, people followed, crowding around him, and a woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She heard about Jesus, so she came up from behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him, so he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? His disciples looked at him and said, look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask who touched me? But he kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. Amen. Isn't that a crazy, incredible story? And there's some things that we have to understand about this story, some things that we even need to understand about this woman. One, and this might be an anatomy lesson for some of you younger ones, I don't know, but the type of bleeding that she was going through would have been somewhat menstrual in its intent. She didn't have like an open wound that wouldn't heal. It was a monthly problem that had never stopped, right? So she'd been doing this for 12 years. Now, if you know anything about the Old Testament law, this woman was now a social outcast. She was a pariah. She was not allowed to be around people. When it's very clear in the Old Testament, when a woman was going through that point in time, she was to separate herself away. There was ceremonial cleansing that had to be done before she could re-enter society, all this kind of stuff. So for 12 years, this woman has been kept on the outskirts of society, not able to interact daily with people, not able to go out into society and function in society and to do all these things. And she's gone and seen doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor, and no one can tell her anything until she hears that Jesus is coming. And in this moment, she realizes, this is it. This is my chance. This guy heals people. And as she looks out at the crowd, now, any of you guys who know anything about medical stuff will understand that somebody who had bled constantly for 12 years is probably not the strongest person in the world. They're going to be anemic. They're going to be very weak. Have you ever tried to push through a crowd? Have any of you ever had the opportunity to go to a Seahawks game? Okay, I had the opportunity a few years ago. My wife took me to a game, and it was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever got to be at. I mean, that stadium is as loud as you think it is, if not louder, right? But I mean, sometimes to fight through the crowds to get places, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I'm just grabbing onto Jen's hand, and we're just going, right? And you're just fighting your way through this huge crowd, and it's hard to push through people. Can you imagine being so weak and trying to push through this packed crowd of people trying to get to Jesus, because everybody wants just a little piece of Jesus' time. They know Jesus is on his way to heal this girl who's dying, and they want to see this miracle happen, so they're huddled in around him as close as they can, and she's just fighting, trying to get to Jesus. Thinking, if I can just touch his robe, if I can just get right there to him, if I can just get my hand on him, I know everything will be better. I know everything will change if I can just get to Jesus. And she makes it. As Jesus turns around and goes, who touched me? And the disciples probably thought Jesus has been out in the sun too long at this point now, because they're like, Jesus, you're in a large crowd of people. There's a lot of people that have touched you, right? You've been bumped by like 6 people. This is not where I would be. I have like a bubble that I like to keep around myself. And Space Invader people, you guys know who I'm talking about? Like, the ones who hug you when you're not prepared for a hug. Now, I will hug people. I don't have a problem with hugging people. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I've hugged him and I offended. No, I'm good with that as long as I know it's coming. It's like the inadvertent, like the hug that you know people that do that? They like to come up and they just like grab you in a hug and you're like, I'm just like, okay. I'm also a little bit of a germaphobe, so when people hug me and I'm not prepared for it, I'm like, are they germy? Are they sweaty? That's just nasty, right? Like, I don't like mosh pits at concerts, even the Christian ones. I don't care if your sweat is Christian, if you have saved or unsaved sweat. I don't want it on me. I barely like my own sweat, let alone somebody else's. That's just gross, right? I don't like being, I like being in front of a crowd, not necessarily right in the middle of it. It's an uncomfortable place to be. But Jesus is right there. And the reason I don't like it is because everyone's touching you. So when Jesus is like, hey, who touched me? The disciples are like, listen, Jesus, a lot of people have touched you. He says, no, I felt some healing power go out of me. And this woman's shaken and trembling, probably a little nervous, right, because Jesus is now looking for her, and 2, shaking and trembling because for the first time in 12 years, she's whole. For the first time in 12 years. Because here's the thing, Jesus' healing power doesn't just stop the bleeding, but restores her body completely. She's not anemic, she's not weak, she's not pale, she's nothing. She is right there. And for the first time in 12 years, she feels well. And so she's just trembling in awe of what's happened. And I love what he says, your faith has made you well. Your faith has made you well. So how do we be like this person? How do we be like this woman with the issue of blood and all that stuff? How do we get to that point? The first thing we need is we need to push through obstacles. We need to get to Jesus. In her mind, the one thing she needed to do was to get to Jesus. She had to get to him. And nothing and no one was going to stop her. If she was knocked to her knees, she was going to crawl until she got to him. She was going to push through every obstacle that came her way. to simply get to Jesus. She had to get there. I just have to get there. She had a determination and a dedication to get there. Determination and dedication are two words that in our society seem to fall very, very lightly. No one likes those words anymore. Nobody wants to be in it for the long haul. Nobody wants the difficult path, the hard road. Nobody likes those words. We don't like that stuff. We want fast food. We want instant gratification. We're so lazy now, we won't even drive to do the McDonald's drive-thru ourselves. We'll pay $4 and let someone from our church do it. And all my Uber Eats people said amen. All right. I would do it, but my car gets 13 miles to the gallon, so that's no way to make money. But no, think about it. We've become such an instant gratification society that we can order food from a bunch of restaurants from an app on our phone and now have someone deliver it personally to our house. It's not just pizza anymore, right? We like that. I'm not docking it. Like, I love it too. It's great. But then when we say, hey, look, you're going to have to work at this, we're like, hey, whoa, hold on. That's not how we work as Americans. We don't work for anything anymore, right? We don't like to work for stuff. You know, you're going to have to work and earn up and save that. No. That's what credit cards are for. I'll just put it on credit and pay it off later. We don't work for things. The idea of being dedicated to something, that's scary. There's a lot of people that don't want to commit to marriage because you say, hey, you're going to be married forever, you know, or at least until you die, right? We're going to be married until you die. That's a long commitment for some people. Depending on how you treat your wife, it may not be as long of a commitment for others. But, right, you say, hey, this is till death. People get a little nervous about that. We want to know why the divorce rate is so high in America and even inside the church, because no one's dedicated to making their marriages work. No one's determined to do it. Hey, I promised for better or for worse in sickness and in health, but really I'm promising for better, for richer, and in health. Once all that goes away, well, then I'm going to go find somebody else who fits that bill. Insert cheesy country song right there. Sorry if I offend anyone who likes country music, but God made everything and then the devil came in and twisted it and messed it up. God made music, the devil came in and twisted it and we got country. So, and if you want to know, think about it. He went down to Georgia and he was looking for a soul to steal because he was in a bind, he was way behind, you know. So anyway, got no more to say about that. But we have to be determined when it comes to having crazy faith, and we have to say, you know what, we have to get to Jesus. We have to develop this relationship with Jesus that helps us to have faith that in these difficult situations, in these difficult moments, in these difficult times, that we have this kind of faith that says, I will not be shaken, I will not be moved. In order to do that, we have to develop a relationship with Jesus, and that takes time, that takes effort. Jesus never says it'll be easy. In fact, he says it'll be the exact opposite. He says, narrow is the gate, and difficult is the way that leads to life, and there are a few who find it. But he said on the opposite, it's easy to make it to hell. It's hard to get to heaven. And people don't like that. Oh, wait, you're telling me, and people want to come to Jesus because they think he's just going to step in and instantly fix all their problems and everything's going to be good. And we've undersold the church in a sense. So people come in and they accept Jesus, and when all their problems don't get fixed, they're like, oh, well, there's nothing to that Christianity thing. We ought not to be showing people what it's like to have all your problems fixed. We ought to be able to show people what it's like to have faith that even in the midst of your problems, I can still serve Jesus. I can still serve God. Even when my life is crumbling around me, I still have faith that my God will see me through. We have to get to Jesus. The next thing we need to do is we need to keep our eyes on Jesus. And this story we find is in Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 33. And it says, immediately after this, the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back in the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up in the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came towards them walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified and feared. They cried out, "It's a ghost." But Jesus spoke to them at once. He said, "Don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." Yes, come, Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. He said, you have so little faith, Jesus said. Why did you doubt me? When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped, and the disciples worshipped him, saying, you really are the Son of God, they exclaimed. To keep our eyes on Jesus. See, I love in this story because Jesus is out there, and I love Peter. Because me and Peter are a lot alike. Peter was impulsive. Peter usually said things without completely thinking about them. Peter is quick to act, we know, because he cut the guy's ear off, right? So he apparently wasn't very good with a sword. I don't think they had like concealed sword licenses back then or anything like that. I think you could just, carry a sword around with you. And Peter was that person that shouldn't. I know they make a lot of these videos, and if you guys go shooting or not, I don't know, but have you ever seen somebody shoot a gun that has no business holding one? Right? There's a few of those videos on Facebook too where you're like, I don't think that's the case. My mom went paintballing a few years back with a bunch of us that went and played, and me and my best friend we were on the same team, and I love my mother, but paintball was not her sport, and she's one of those people, she's like as scary to the people who are on her team as you are to the people who are not on her team. The game hasn't even started. We're circled up. We're sitting there, and we're waiting for the ref to tell us to go, and all of a sudden we hear a paintball gun go off, and I look over, my friend is leaning over, going, oh! My mom had just standing there, shot him in the inside of his upper thigh before the game even starts. Okay, needless to say, not the person you feel safe with. That's why Peter was with a sword, all right? Just not the best person to have around in a fight. But I love Peter because he's impulsive. So he sees Jesus walking on the water, and he's like, hey, Jesus, if that's you, tell me to get out of the boat. And Jesus is like, all right, come on. So Peter hops out of the boat, and he's walking on the water. He's like, this is awesome, until he gets distracted. And he hears the wind, and he sees the waves, and he begins to sink. So we need to understand that Jesus reassures us in the midst of a storm. In the midst of life's storms, in the midst of the difficult parts of life, keeping our eyes on Jesus, it reassures us. It gives us faith that helps us to know that there's somebody out there who can calm the storm if he chooses. There's somebody out there who, even if he doesn't calm the storm, can get us through it. Next thing we need to understand is we must not allow what's in the peripheral to become our focus. See, if Peter would have got out of the boat and kept his eyes on Jesus, the waves would have been fuzzy. The waves would have been blurry. He wouldn't have been focused on them. We almost need to, in some ways, have almost like a spiritual tunnel vision or like blinders like they put on a horse, right? To look at Jesus and not be worried about what's going on outside there. Because the minute that we take our eyes off Jesus, our problems become bigger. The minute we take our eyes off Jesus, it becomes scary to look around at what's going on. When Peter's eyes were on Jesus, the wind and the storm wasn't scary. He was walking on water. But when he looked and saw, and it became scary, and he became afraid, he began to sink. So we need to not let what's in our peripheral become our focus. Our focus should be on Jesus, on our relationship with him, on making sure that we stay good there, because when we do that, the obstacles and the things in the peripheral, the waves and the storms, they won't seem so scary. And I can't tell you that they won't be there or that they'll automatically go away, because they won't, and they will be there. But we'll at least have the faith to be able to get through. See, because here's the thing, even big problems pale in comparison to the power of Jesus. It doesn't matter how bad the problem gets, Jesus' power is greater. He conquered death. What else? There's nothing worse out there, right? He conquered death. And we get to see this because when we develop this kind of crazy faith, when you have this kind of crazy faith that just says, no matter what, come what may, I'm going to serve Jesus, makes you like a lot like David, King David. You guys remember the story of David and Goliath? It's one of my favorite stories in the whole Bible. But I love it because as David gets out and he's squaring off against Goliath, Goliath begins to laugh because Goliath is huge. And as he's looking down at David, he says, what am I, a dog that you come at me with sticks? And he begins to mock David. And he begins to tell David how he's going to kill him, how he's going to feed him to everybody, the beasts of the field and the birds of the air. The animals are going to eat your body, David. You have no chance against somebody like me. But I love David's answer because David comes across as even more confident than Goliath does. Now, to understand this, Goliath for the past month has been standing up and mocking God. He's been mocking God for over a month, standing up there, taunting God's army, saying, send someone. And there's not one person brave enough. There's not one person in the army of Israel with enough faith to say, you know what? This guy's defying God, so I don't even have to be a good soldier. I can beat this guy. Because God's with me. But David does. And so David walks out and he steps up and he says, listen. He goes, you come at me with sword and spear, but I come at you in the name of the Lord of Israel, whom you have defied. And today, he says, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to cut your head off, and I'm going to feed your body to the beasts of the field and the birds of the air, and everyone will know that there is a God in Israel. And then boom, David does what? Knocks him out with a slingshot, chops off his head, and everybody, all the Philistines are just like, what just happened? Right? They saw their champion walk out there. And it's over, just like that, because some punk little junior high kid knocked him out. I always picture David as like a junior high kid with a squeaky voice when he talks to Goliath. I don't know, that's just my interpretation. It's not biblical necessarily, it makes the story more fun for me. But we need to have that kind of faith. We need to have that kind of faith that stands up, that stands in front of problems and says, you know what? We will not let this win. I won't let this beat me. I won't let this get me down. When the doctor comes in and says, I have terrible news, and they give it to you, and you say, you know what? That's awful news, but I'm still going to praise my God. I'm still going to serve Him. I'm still going to worship Him. When your bank account is empty and there's still more bills coming in, when your children are walking farther and farther away from God, you're going to say, you know what? I'm still going to praise you. I'm still going to follow you. I'm still going to seek you. When we live in a section of our state that is impoverished, that is crime-ridden. I mean, you hear a story of something happening on the news, there's a pretty good chance it happened in Lakewood. When we see those things happen, and we say, you know what? We're not going to be afraid. We don't know what man can do to us. We know what man can do to us, but we're not afraid of it. We're going to have the kind of faith that says, you know what? We're done running, we're done hiding, but we're going out there, and like that little song we used to sing in children's church was, I went to the enemy's camp and I took back what he stole from me. That's kind of the gung-ho like call of my youth ministry this fall is we're like, hey, you know what? We're going after kids. Like, we're going after the schools. We're done letting the devil have his fun. We're done letting him play around with the kids in Lakewood. It's over. So I'll charge you guys for the same thing. You guys live here. You work here. This is your home. Let's be done letting him have his way. And let's go out there and let's find these people who need him. And that's everyone. Let's find them. Let's have the kind of faith that says, you know what? I'm not afraid. Bring on the wind. Bring on the rain. I'm good. Bring it on. And the final thing we have to do in order to have crazy faith is to turn down the noise. Turn down the noise. Mark chapter 10, verses 46 through 52. It says, then they reached Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples left town, a large crowd followed him. A blind beggar named Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, was sitting beside the road. When Bartimaeus heard that Jesus of Nazareth was nearby, he began to shout, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Be quiet, many of the people yelled at him, but he only shouted louder, Son of David, have mercy on me. When Jesus heard him, he stopped and said, tell him to come here. So they called the blind man. Cheer up, they said, come on, he's calling you. Bartimaeus threw aside his coat, jumped up, and came to Jesus. What do you want for me to do? Jesus asked. My rabbi, the blind man said, I want to see. Jesus said, go. Your faith has healed you. Instantly the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road. I love this story. It's one of my favorite stories in all the Bible, because Bartimaeus has heard all these stories about Jesus. He's been blind, most likely since birth. In this culture, that means pretty much all he's useful for is to sit beside the city wall at the gate and beg. And beg for people to give him whatever little bit of money or change they have, and he can bring that back. And I'm sure he felt a lot of times like a burden to his family. The Bible doesn't say that. Just culturally, that was kind of how it went. and he hears that this Jesus of Nazareth, who's opened other blind eyes, is coming his way. And this is his moment. This is his chance. And as he begins to yell, people begin to tell him, hey, be quiet. Be quiet. Don't distract Jesus. Knock it off. Zip it. See, noise is anything that will distract you from your faith. And the world is full of noise. Any of you in here are parents of more than one child? Parents of more than one? Okay, the reason that you have to have more than one is because there's not really a lot of arguing going on in the back seat if you just have one child. And if there is, well, then you might need to have him looked at. Unless they're talking to their imaginary friend, that's healthy. But if they're just, arguing with themselves, I don't know. But we have 3 kids, and so when we go on trips, there's noise in the car, right? And at times, you'll put on the movie, but they're not always watching. Sometimes the movie's on playing in there, and those of you guys who raised your children before there was movie players in cars, I don't know how you did it. You were amazing parents. God bless you. I would have gone nuts. But the in-car DVD player, that was developed. I think God gave divine inspiration to somebody for that, because that is an incredible feature. But even when you have that on, and you're sitting in close quarters, you get the, stop touching me! Don't do, and then, the kid that just wants to, I have 2, my youngest 2 like to just yell for no reason. They're not even yelling anything understandable. It's just, only much louder. After a while, as a parent, your patience begins to dwindle, and you can't even hear yourself think. And sometimes my younger 2 will be sitting in the back seat just yelling and doing it, and it's been rougher this last week because they lost television for a couple of different reasons that I won't go into, but there was no television in our house for the kids. So that meant that there was nothing for them to watch to entertain them in the car, so they just decided to find other ways to entertain themselves. So I remember driving here into the church one day, trying to talk to my oldest son who was sitting in the front seat with me, and I finally had to turn around and go, listen, you 2 got to be quiet because I can't hear your brother. And he's sitting, a foot from me. If you've met any of my children, you know none of them are quiet. So the fact that you can't hear one of them when the other 2 are being loud means the other 2 are they're really being loud. So, but it's that idea of noise, right? Live in a house with 3 kids, 2 large dogs, and a cat. There's a lot of noise in our house. Sometimes trying to hear people and hear things is difficult. But as Christians, we have to learn to push that noise aside because noise is distracting. Noise is anything that will try to distract you from your faith. It'll try to grab your attention. It'll try to get you to look this way or that way. And it's not necessarily wrong. It's not necessarily bad. It's just something that's out there and it's causing you to be half-focused. Part on Jesus, part not on Jesus. Part on what God can do, part on not what God can do. And there's always all this noise. The other thing is that noise will try to silence you. Noise will try to grow so loud that you don't feel like you can shout out, like you don't feel like you can do anything because it's so loud, it's so everywhere. You feel like it just drowns you out. And I love this because as Bartimaeus begins to call out for Jesus because he's desperate in this moment, this is his chance. Jesus is right here and he wants to see. As he begins to call out for Jesus, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. All the people, all the noise starts, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. Your next point, when you begin this journey of crazy faith, people will try to discourage you. People will try to tell you there's nothing to that thing called Christianity. There's nothing to that Jesus. That's just all a bunch of weird mumbo-jumbo. The people who believe that are nuts. They're crazy. They're not educated. They're not intelligent. Let me tell you, some of the most intelligent people I have ever met are people that know the Word of God. But they will try to tell you everything to try and discourage you. You don't want to follow that. Oh, you became one of those people? Oh, you did that? Oh, you're like that? Oh. Right? You guys, by the way you're laughing, you all know the oh, right? People say, oh, well, what did you do on Sunday? Oh, Sunday I had church in the morning. Oh, you go to church? Yeah. Well, what church? Oh, this. Oh, so you're a Christian? Yeah. Oh. In the moment when they say that, oh, you can hear them processing everything they've said to you. over like the last however long. It was funny at my work, whenever people would find out I was a Christian, they'd be like, oh. And then I would hear them, and I'm like, they're thinking about every explicative they've used in the last 5 minutes in this conversation with me. It's even more fun because I'm a pastor, so I'm like, oh, I have 2 jobs. Oh, what's your other job? Oh, I'm a pastor. Oh. And this like look of sheer terror comes over their face, and I love it. It's great. I'm like, it's fine, it's whatever. Like, I don't expect people who aren't Christians to behave the same way as the ones that are. What's really fun, though, is the people who are Christians who are using all those explicatives and then find out you're a pastor, and then they're like, oh. They can be like, I think I hear my kid crying. You're single without children. Oh, well, I got to go. It's just because it's fun. But, no, there's that, because people think there's something weird to all of this. And if they truly understood what it meant to be a Christian, if they truly understand the hope that it gave us, if they truly understand the kind of faith that we got from this, the support that it came to being able to come and be a part of this church family. We have an incredible, incredible church family that is totally willing to support people and to support each other, and we do that so well. Amen. I would encourage you, that's why you need to invite more and more and more people here, because you guys are awesome. Amen. You guys are incredible. You really are. Jen and I have been here for almost 2 years. We couldn't picture wanting to be doing church anywhere else. And that's a big deal because we came from a pretty awesome church that we grew up in. We both really loved our church that we grew up in that was our home church for years. We loved it. We love here more. You guys are awesome. You're supportive. You are a great church family. You are a great Christian family to have. And there's a bunch of people out there that could use you in their lives because you're awesome. Okay, I'm done. You guys feel good about yourselves now? Everybody's happy and smiling? All right. The reason that you're all awesome, and I'm telling you all that, is because when we go to 2 services and we have lots of room in here, and even before that, next week bring people. We can handle sitting next to each other for 1 week, right? I'll take a shower, I promise. No, but you guys are so awesome and supportive and so ready to help other people and the rest of your church family. We need to have more people in here for us to help. There needs to be more people that get to know you guys, that get to experience, the value of your guys' life and what you've done and what you've been through. Because we all have experiences and we all have things, we all have stuff God's brought us through that are valuable experiences to other people who are in the church. The reason the early church grew so much is they were always hanging out with each other. There was a support system in place there. So when somebody came back and said, hey, I talked to my coworker about Jesus and they totally laughed at me and made fun of me, they came back to a place where people said, hey, it's okay. Hey, you did the right thing. Hey, you planted a seed. You did whatever. But they had a support system in place. Because people will try to discourage you when you get on this idea of crazy faith. When you begin to believe for things that nobody else, you say, you know what? I believe that God has placed this on my heart to begin to pray for. And I'm going to begin to pray for it. And I'm going to begin to ask Jesus for it. And it seems crazy. And it seems out there. And it seems like something that isn't possible. People are going to begin to say, you know what, you're crazy. You shouldn't do that. But I love this because in this story, when people begin to tell Bartimaeus to be quiet, what did he do? It says he cried out even louder. You will not silence me. I need to get to Jesus. I need Jesus. And so I don't care how loud you yell at me. I don't care if you tell me to be quiet. I'm not going to be quiet until Jesus hears me. He cried out, Son of David, have mercy on me. Even louder. He got louder. When everything told him to be quiet, he got louder. I'm going to tell you guys, the state of the world does not get better before the end. I've read the book. I saw how it ends, okay? We win, but it gets bad. Okay? So it's not going to get better out there necessarily. That just means we got to get louder. And it's funny because the Bible all the time refers to things as light, right? We're the salt of the earth, that we've been given this, that we have this light in us, it's the light to the world, and all this kind of stuff. Well, guess what? The darker things, guess what happens when things get really dark and you turn on light? The light's brighter. And I'll tell you this, did you know that scientifically, there's no such thing as darkness technically? Darkness is simply the absence of light. So if we're upset about how dark things have gotten, it's simply because we stopped being light. If it's too dark out there, it's because we stopped being light. And I'm right in that boat with you. Because we let people mock us. We let people make us be quiet. We let people think all kinds of weird stuff about Christians because the only ones they see are the crazy people that end up on the news. I see those people on the news and I'm like, I wouldn't go to that church. That person's nuts. It's like they go find like the weird family member, right, from your, like, you know, and we're a family, right? So it's like they went and found the weirdest person, the one that you love but you don't let speak to people. Like, they're like, we have one in every family, all right? And everybody knows who it is. And if you're thinking about your family and can't figure it out who it is, well, just saying. But no, and that's who they seem to put up there, so that's people's picture of church sometimes. So we need to help undo that. We need to help people see, hey, no. We're going to begin to have this crazy faith because you see, we need to develop a determined faith that cannot be distracted or silenced. We need to come to this idea of, I will not be silenced. I will not stop. I am willing to pray for things that are crazy. I'm willing to pray for things that don't seem possible. I'm willing to pray for things that are nuts. I'm telling you, I did this at one point, and I even forgot that I did it until a couple weeks ago. So, towards the beginning of this year, I was really pushing, and I really wanted to see a lot of stuff happen in our youth ministry, and I knew there was things that needed to happen, and one of them was we needed youth leaders, because we had none. It was me and Jennifer, and every once in a while, you know, Justin was able to come and be a part, but, you know, with work, he wasn't always able to be there all the time, and stuff like that, so we needed youth leaders. So I began to pray, God, give me youth leaders. Give me youth leaders. I need youth leaders, God, bring them to me, however you want to do it. And at one point, and I was on this kick of crazy faith and believing that I needed to do it and believing all this kind of stuff, and I'd kind of gotten out of the habit of praying for it. I'm embarrassed to say, but I had, and all of a sudden, end of July, when all the youth were gone at camp, we all showed up, and we didn't have any youth kids show up because they were all at camp. So, but all the youth leaders showed up that night. And I said, hey, if no one shows up, we'll just do an impromptu youth leader meeting and talk about stuff. Can I tell you that I had 6 adults, young adults, there to be youth leaders when a few months before I had none? And I'm not 100% sure, but I think 6 was the number I was praying for. I don't remember exactly if that was the case, but I remember praying, God, give me a lot of them. And to go from 0 to 6, that's a lot. Right? And so I remember seeing that, and I looked at these youth leaders and said, do you guys understand? You are the answer to prayer. And you're the answer to a big prayer. You're the answer to something that we needed. And I'm sure sitting out there today, whoop. Everybody awake? Okay. Sitting out there today, if we were to go through, there's a lot of big needs. And there's a lot of big things that you guys want to see happen, that need to happen in your lives. There's a lot of areas where we need to have crazy faith. And I would encourage you guys, let's get a little crazy. Let's be willing to ask God for big things. Let's be willing to say, God, I'm going to begin to pray for this. And I'm going to pray, and I'm going to pray, and I'm going to pray until you either tell me no or until I see it happen. But until you tell me no, I'm going to have the faith that it's going to happen. Let's begin to pray for our community. Let's pray that this place gets so packed that we have to go to 3 and 4 and 5 services. And let's keep praying for crazy things. Let's keep praying for souls. Let's not stop, because here's the thing. If we pray for souls, God's not going to tell you no on that one because it's kind of right in line with His Word. So let's just keep praying and going after it until we see it happen. Are you with me? You want to come up? So, I want to close this way. If everyone across this room would bow their heads, close their eyes. With no one looking around this morning, the first question that I want to ask is simply if you've come into this place, and I've been talking about this Jesus who's capable of doing amazing things. And you say, I've never put my faith in Jesus. I've never placed my faith in Him at all. But today I want to place my faith in Him. Today I want to accept Him as my Savior. If that's you this morning, would you raise your hand wherever you are? My second question is this. Say, Pastor Josh, I want to have this crazy faith. I want to have this kind of audacious faith that's willing to pray for big things, that prays through difficulties, that keeps its eyes focused on Jesus so that no matter what goes on around me, I don't get distracted from what I'm supposed to be doing. If that's you this morning, would you raise your hand?